On USP Alcatraz as a heart home for me if I were in prison after choosing my Heathcliff. Today is Sunday, 15 February 2026, and here I, Tanis Coralee of Seattle, ruminate about if United States Penitentiary Alcatraz, USP Alcatraz, would be a heart home for myself if I were in prison after choosing my Heathcliff. So this is bringing together kind of a number of my different projects, and I'll link to some of my related playlists on this channel, including Broaching Soulmate Residency in England, Heritage Travel Trip playlist, name may change kind of thing, ruminating about surnames, and USA Date TBD trip. It's also a nod to my movie going and kind of talking about love. And so I've covered Pride and Prejudice, which was initially by Jane Austen, initially published back in 1813. And Wuthering Heights is by Emily Bronte and was initially published 1847. And they're both classics in English literature. And so, and provide kind of different love contexts. And so I saw 2026 film Wuthering Heights this past Thursday, 12 February 2026. And it's it's about a woman who starts off as a girl, and she lives in a house with her dad, a servant girl, and they got a boy from the street. They take in a boy from the street that she names Heathcliff. And so not a brother, they grow up together and they become adults, and she's looking, she kind of like, being a maiden of an estate. So I'm a stay-at-home daughter. So she's a stay-at-home daughter, and she's looking for her next role as a stay-at-home wife. And so there's a wealthy man with luxury. And so while they had enough money for an estate, they weren't, so they had money without luxury. This guy has money and luxury and wealth. It's a big estate. And so and that man's name is Mr. Linton. So she approaches Mr. Linton, and he decides to take her. So she is the initiator there, which is a bit different than Pride and Prejudice, which is something I brought up that book already. And but then after she takes Mr. Linton, and the escalation there for her choosing Mr. Linton is Heathcliff and her oversee people having sexual intercourse. And so she marries, and Mr. Linton loses her virginity to him, and then Heathcliff comes along, and she kind of, initially was like no to Heathcliff because he didn't have enough money to take care of the estate. And then Heathcliff goes and makes his own money, and she's already married to Mr. Linton and has lost her virginity, and he's like, I still want you. And she chooses not to drop Mr. Linton. She sticks with Mr. Linton, but she works through which one does she want, kind of, ultimately choosing Mr. Linton as the one she passes away with. So I, on the other hand, per real life experience, I did, if we take my Gibran Cedar and me emailing him directly about work stuff back in the 2010s decade, then I emailed, so I have a Mr. Linton, and he I sent the email and he opened it, and so that's the opening of the gate. And then he responded, not interested. So instead of me being Catherine in Wuthering Heights, where she gets yes from, an interested from Mr. Linton, I got the not interested. And I chose to drop it. I chose to drop Mr. Linton and instead go with my Heathcliff. And my Heathcliff, and and who took my virginity, my Jacob Elordi, this past January, so 3 January 2026, if I'm recalling correctly. And yesterday was Valentine's Day, and his Valentine's Day gift to me this year, he let me find it, is a marble. And it's his way of saying he listens to me. He watches my YouTube stuff, and he listens to me because I haven't actually I named one of the Western gray squirrels of the backyard Marble. And I haven't actually put Marble, the gray squirrel, in any of the titles on the video. So he listened and heard the name Marble. So I have chosen my Heathcliff. So I went an alternative pathway to Wuthering Heights. And I was like, okay, so how does that relate to, I've been talking about what if I were to go to prison for killing my rapist. And I was like, would USP Alcatraz be a heart home for myself? And it was actually, when I was on site at USP Alcatraz, I was like, if I did go to prison for something, this might be a home. And I was like, why does it feel like home? And I was like, well, they why did they kill? Why were they in prison for like so long? You know, some of them for decades they were in prison. And they had all these crimes and all this stuff that they did. And what was their drive? And I was like, maybe it was love. And the love of their life, but then a love of their soulmate. And like, they're like, but maybe their wife didn't, you know, measure up to what they expected. And it's like, well, then they're doing it for their soulmate, and they choose to invoke, what would my soulmate want of me, or expect of me, or how do I honor them? And so, and I was like, in killing my rapist is for my soulmate, right? He tried to take my virginity non-consensually, and I fought back. And so essentially my virginity story becomes my Jacob and my Heathcliff and my story, my love story of my life, so to speak, becomes my virginity story. And I was desired so much by men that I was even raped for it, and that doesn't count because it has to be consensual. So it gives a yes. I would say yes to, I'm in a prison cell somewhere, and you know, my heart being in a, since I'm Euro Native American, being like carrying on the English. I chose Heathcliff, but then also I chose a prison in the United States of America, so an honor to my Native American ancestry. So it's like, yes, that is a fit per my in-person experience. I visited there initially back in May 2014. So, you know, carrying on of my own life story, but also in respect to my own ancestry / ethnicities. So there we go. That's on USP Alcatraz as a heart home for me if I were in prison after choosing my Heathcliff.